Well, I got the flywheel off the crankshaft. My rigging all was very successful. It did pull off pretty hard, so I do have a good fit with the flywheel to the crankshaft. But unfortunately, I'm not going to use that crankshaft. I got a better one that I'm going to use in this tractor. But for the future use, I know that crankshaft is pretty good shape on the end and will accept a standard size flywheel. But I got the flywheel off and I got the crankshaft out and I got the tractor rolled into the assembly room here. I've disassembled the front end, completely taken that apart, and now I'm ready to put it all back together. It's going to be a little different from putting new parts back together. This is going to be using a lot of used parts. I'm trying to find the best used parts I can for this tractor and putting it back together with those. So with that, I'll change my camera and I'll show you what I'm working on the front end. So first of all, I wanted to show you down underneath here at the bottom of the crankcase. At one time or another, they had somebody oversize this bolt and fit it back into the crankcase. I suppose the original one got loose and wallered out the thread, so they oversized that. But I kind of worked on this and ground that flat so I can put a washer in on there and it'll lay flat up against there. And then coming around to my front end, I ground this out a little bit right here so I could accept another. This will be where that washer against the crankcase seats into, and so I've got that kind of flat and it'll stay away from the crankcase and not wear into the crankcase, and then I'll put this washer on the other side. But I also have made a bushing to go in here to take up some of the slack, and there's one little spot down in here that I have to grind out a little bit in order to get that bushing in there, but hopefully I'll have enough room to get that all in there after I grind around on this a little bit. So I'll put it back up on the stand and start grinding on, and we'll see if we can get that axle back underneath there. And then on the front hole, it looks pretty good from the front side. The back side underneath there, it's got a little breaking out, but I've seen a lot worse. But on the front side, it looks pretty nice. And what I did, I made a shaft, a new pin that's a 16th bigger than the original. The original was 1.125 inches, and I made an 1 3/16, and then I ground out on the side a little bit of this hole to kind of get it back into round, so I can fit that pin back in there. And it looks really nice from the front side. From the back side, I can't correct all of that, but it's still got a little gap back here, but it still fits in there pretty tight. So with that, that's going to be on the back side and the underside, and probably nobody will really notice anyway, but it's going to be way better than it was before. So with that, I'll put it back on the stand and get the grinding on this thing. So all I've got is just my drill with a simple little grindstone on it, and I don't have to take out a lot. But this is the same thing what I used back on this hole here too. So it worked pretty decent, but there's just a little bit of ridge in there I have to work on to get that bushing in there. Okay, that looks good. We'll try that, see if I can get that all together in there. I'm going to put it back in there on that back stud before I put the bushing in, and hopefully I can slip the bushing in after I get it on, and that'll allow me some play back there to get everything together right. I had to grind this out a little bit too on the bolster in order to get the axle or the pin in there. And it looks like the radius rods are adjusted about right. So when I'm seated back there, I'm about halfway in between here on the bolster. Put the big cotter pin back in there. It looks like it wants to be ground out a little bit more on the back side. I suppose I'm not going to be able to get that out of it. Okay, now I got it to tip down in the back a little bit more so I can pull the back of my yoke up. We'll see if that made enough difference. Yeah, that helped quite a bit, and I think I can get my bushing in the back now. Okay, so I'll stick the bushing on there. And now I can crank that bolt down on the back and make it all snug. Get a big washer. I'll have to run and get some penetrating oil. Okay. It all looks good. To make that look more authentic, I could drill a hole through the threads there and put a cotter key. Put the cotter key in that front bolster pin. Okay, finally got that together. Everything swings pretty good. Now I'm ready to put on the front spindles. And these kingpins don't screw in, they're just held in by this bolt. So that's a change from 25 to 26. And I'm going to put a couple kind of thrust washers on top of that spindle to take up some of the gap and to give it something other than just wear it into the axle. Okay, so I'm rigged up here. I put one rivet in already to test it out. I found that stripped out hub that I took out of the 25 steel wheel, and it comes up about 7 inches. I add a couple more plates on there and I get it up to about the right height. So I'm ready to put in the second rivet. You want to heat them up just as hot as you can get them before they start to melt. If they start to melt, why then you're going to have a tough time getting them in the hole because they'll be distorted. And the reason you have to put them in after you put the spindle in, because of the steering mechanism, it won't let you get anything apart with the rivets already in the sector and the spindle. So you have to do this. And then heat them up good before you pound them flat. I have a mushroom set that I use to get kind of the authentic look. And you can even start to melt them up here, but you don't want to do that before you get it in the hole. And the reason you heat the whole rivet is because that way it tightens up all the way through the hole. It expands that rivet all the way through. That looks good and tight. And also you don't want to distort your second hole too. I took the bolt out that I had in there because it was hitting my set on the bottom side. So I took a chance to see if this hole would stay lined up, and it has. So, okay, we'll move everything over. Got it a little off from center on the top side. See if I can correct that at all. Probably not. If it's off just a little bit, it's probably best to try to drill it out so that the rivet goes up in there easily. I think it just had some extra rust in there. Looked like it was a little mushroomed on the ends. Got that done. Move that rigging all the way. Now we're ready to put the worm drive in. And I've already fitted this in once. And it takes a washer inside. You don't want to have the worm inside the housing tight. It's got to be able to move back and forth just a little bit, but you don't want too much play back and forth. Otherwise, that'll work the keyway a lot and it'll give you a lot of play on your steering wheel. So I've got that. And then put the keyway in. And then I'll come back and grease all this when I get it all together. Nothing's changed since and another trick to it is you can't get this in if the shaft is too far out. So I think I'm gonna have to put that on there first. then the keyway, and then the worm. I think the worm's the same both ways. And then the washer. See if I can get it in there that way. Okay, we'll tighten that up and see what kind of play I have in there, but I think I should have it right. So I got probably an eighth of a turn, but that's probably as good as I'm going to get it. But it turns freely. Turns free, and I don't have a lot of back and forth with the worm drive. There's a little back and forth in the gear lash, but there's nothing you can do about that. That's a pretty good gear set that was on it, so I'm putting it back on. The only ones that I've seen better is new old stock ones, and this one's awful good. So we're going to leave that on there. And then to take up the play on the shaft, I want to have that tight. So I'll temporarily put this on there. I got to get the U-joint put together before I permanently do this, but I need to find out what my spacing here is between this end and this end, and use washers to shim that shaft up. The tighter you have it in all these mechanisms here, the less play you'll have in your steering wheel. I need this little one here, but I need to grind it out just a little bit so it'll go on there. Okay, I got that little washer honed out just a little bit. Got all the play taken up, but it turns free. So that looks really good. I'll just have to do some greasing on it, and it'll be ready to go. Now my next problem is the bracket that goes into the transmission case on the backs, or on the middle of the U-joint shaft. I need to put a helicoil in that bolt hole because it had all the threads wallered out. So that's my next problem to fix. So this hole down here, these holes were all good around here, but this hole was oversized, and you're supposed to drill it out with a 17/32 bit before you thread it. Yeah, 17/32, and then you tap it with their special tap, which I ran in there. It was already oversized enough to where I didn't have to drill it, and I still cut probably 70% threads in there with that, with their threading tool. I got that in there. Now with their little special tool to turn in the helicoil, you just use that helicoil and that special little insert, and you thread it on there, and it actually turns it in from the inside. It catches on the inside here on that inside thread, and then it turns it in there, and then you can back out the tool and it's locked in there then. So there's a little bit of flange in there. You can feel it on the inside, and I think I've probably got it in there far enough. And then it'll accept the regular 1/2-inch bolt again. So we can pull the steering wheel down. Of course, I don't have the, let's see which way does I go. seems like it's on backwards, but it can't possibly be on backwards. I think it must go right there. But yeah, I don't have the bearing for the differential in there, but I wanted to run it outside and clean out the transmission. So I wanted to hook this up. For some reason, it doesn't sync quite right. It should be wearing right in there where it wore before. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, unless it's supposed to be in that hole. Well, I'll hook it up here on the U-joint. That doesn't reach to that hole. Kind of like that. The geometry isn't quite right since I don't have my bearing quill in there, but anyway, hopefully it'll be enough to where I can get it outside. Now I'm working on the wheels. I've put a new race and greased the bearing and put it in there. But a lot of times these lips in here for the dust cap are wore out, and so you have to shim those up. And usually it takes maybe one. What I do is I cut another cap that's not that great a shape, maybe a little worn. I cut it right there, and then I slip it over the top of the other one on the inside. But still, that wasn't enough to take up the gap, so I had to make another little shim. So you got to be kind of careful that you get everything started in there straight, and that in the end you have the right amount of shimming. Not too much and not too little. And I'm going to try this and see if it's close. If it goes in too easy, I'll have to figure out something else, but I think it looks like it's pretty close. And in order to keep it from destroying that edge of that cup, you can use some sort of a race or something to drive those in there. Okay, so that's in there pretty tight. I don't know why that one side won't go down. Try it a little bit more. And then put your felts on. I'm ready to slip the wheel on. Grease up the bearing and put it in. I like to grease the race a little bit in there. I just put enough in to where the bearings have their grease. I suppose if you're going out to work it real hard and plan on doing a lot of work with it, you might want to fill up that hub with grease. This is kind of a tacky grease designed to not melt away on a hot day, and then you want to go drive your tractor and the grease is all out of the bearings. So it's kind of a high-tech grease. I kind of turn them kind of snugged up and then back them off one. That's about it on the front axle. All that's pretty much left to do is grease it. And there it is. Well, that pretty much completes the front end on this 26 spoker. And I think I've got about as tight a steering as you can get from old parts. Even if the parts were new, when I did my new old stock 25, it still had a certain amount of in play in the steering. So they're not made at close tolerances. There's a lot of leeway, but you can eliminate as much as you can by putting in washers and shims and making sure your bearings all are good and your front end bolster is in good shape. And with that, I will sign off from this episode. If you like this content, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and go back and look at some of my other episodes. I've done some new gen work on ACs and cabs. Also, my 25 spoker that I rebuilt new old stock, there was about 30 episodes there. So if you're rebuilding one of these early Ds, it sure wouldn't hurt to have a little bit of reference on what you're doing. You can see what I'm doing, you like it or not. You can use it or not use it or improve upon it. But anyway, I appreciate your interest. And if you like the content, make sure you like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and to Facebook, and we'll see you down the road.